There is a list of foods so powerful that people have been eating them for over 3,000 years. Foods mentioned in sacred scripture, carried across ancient trade routes, and eaten by kings and farmers alike. And here's what is fascinating. Modern researchers are now looking at those exact same foods and finding compounds that support the human body in ways that were never fully understood until recently. This is not a coincidence. This is history meeting science in the most unexpected way. Today, we are going through 5 fruits mentioned in the Bible, what ancient people believed they could do, and what nutrition researchers have actually found. One of these fruits has a part that most people throw away, and that discarded part turns out to be the most nutritionally powerful section of the whole thing. Another was used in ancient Egypt, both as food and as medicine, over 3,000 years ago. And one fruit near the end of this list contains a compound locked inside its skin that researchers have been studying for what it might do to the aging. Stay with us. Fruit number 1 is the pomegranate. Few fruits carry as much symbolism as this one. In the Hebrew Bible, it appears in the Song of Solomon, on the robes of high priests, and as one of the 7 species considered sacred to the land of Israel. Ancient people did not just eat pomegranates. They revered them, and here is where it gets interesting. The part of the pomegranate that most people throw away, the white membrane between the seeds, actually contains some of the highest concentrations of polyphenols in the entire fruit. The seeds themselves and the juice they hold have been studied for their potential effect on inflammation and cardiovascular health. Some nutritional studies suggest pomegranate juice has more antioxidant activity per serving than red wine or green tea. So the next time you are wrestling one open and staining everything red, know that ancient people believed they were eating something divine. And researchers today think they might have been onto something real. Fruit number 2 is the fig. Figs appear throughout Scripture more than almost any other plant. They sheltered the prophet Elijah. Jesus references them repeatedly. But before any of that, Egyptian healers were already using fig extracts as far back as 1550 BC to treat skin conditions and digestive complaints. That is not legend. That comes from the Ebers Papyrus, one of the oldest known medical documents ever discovered. Modern nutritional science finds that figs are genuinely rich in dietary fiber and contain natural sugars that digest more gradually than processed sugars. They also contain prebiotics, compounds that feed beneficial gut bacteria. A single dried fig can contain as much calcium as a small glass of milk. The fig is quiet, ancient, and remarkably well designed by nature. Before we continue, the fruit coming up next has been called the bread of the desert. Warriors in ancient armies depended on it for energy before going into battle. Keep watching. Fruit number 3 is the date. Dates are arguably the most misunderstood food on this list. Most people see them as a sweet treat, something to eat occasionally with cheese. But in ancient desert civilizations, dates were a survival food. Travelers would carry them for weeks across dry terrain, because a small amount provided enough fuel to keep moving. The reason is simple. Dates are calorie-dense in a way that is entirely natural. They contain natural sugars, potassium, magnesium, and B vitamins in a combination that the body absorbs efficiently. Some studies suggest they contain more potassium per 100 grams than a banana. One study found that pregnant women who consumed dates in the final weeks of pregnancy had shorter labor times compared to those who did not. Whether or not that specific result scales across larger populations, the sustained energy profile of dates alone makes them worth understanding. For ancient soldiers marching through the desert, that probably felt less like food and more like fuel. Fruit number 4 is the olive. More specifically, the olive itself, not just the oil. The olive appears throughout both the Old and New Testaments more than any other fruit. Noah's dove returns with an olive branch. The Mount of Olives is the setting for some of the most significant moments in the Gospels. In ancient Greece, olive oil was so valuable it was stored in temples and awarded to Olympic champions. And here is the nutritional reality behind olive, that reverence. Olives contain a compound called oleocanthal, which some researchers have compared to ibuprofen in terms of how it affects inflammation in the body. They are also one of the few fruits genuinely high in healthy fat, specifically oleic acid, which has been linked to reduced inflammation and better cardiovascular markers. Across multiple studies, here is something most people never think about. Olives straight from the tree are completely inedible. They are so intensely bitter that ancient people had to develop fermentation and curing methods just to make them palatable. The fact that humans invested that effort thousands of years ago tells you exactly how much they valued what the olive gave them in return. Fruit number 5 is the grape. The grape is everywhere in biblical text. Wine is central to Jewish religious practice. Grapes appear in virtually every harvest and abundance story across both testaments. But the compound that makes grapes scientifically interesting today has almost nothing to do with the flesh of the fruit. It is in the skin. Resveratrol, found primarily in grape skins, has been studied for its potential connection to longevity, cardiovascular health, and cellular aging. The concentration is higher in darker grape varieties, and the fermentation process used to make wine actually draws more of it out of the skin and into the liquid. Ancient people did not know what resveratrol was. They just knew that wine, consumed in moderation, seemed to appear wherever long life and good health were discussed. It turns out they were observing something the science is still working to fully explain. Here is what is worth pausing on. Every fruit on this list appeared not just in scripture, but on ancient trade routes spanning thousands of miles. Phoenician merchants, Greek traders, Egyptian healers, Roman soldiers. They all carried these same foods across the known world. That is not a food trend. That is a pattern that ran through entire civilizations. And it raises a question worth sitting with. Were they choosing these foods for taste alone? Or did they instinctively sense how these foods made them feel and perform? The nutritional data suggests the instinct was very good. 5 foods, 3,000 years of human use, and a growing body of modern research that keeps arriving at the same conclusion that ancient people somehow already reached. Pomegranate, fig, date, olive, grape. They were not chosen randomly. They survived because they worked in the fields, in the markets, across entire generations. Here is what we want to leave you with. The foods that sustained the longest-lived civilizations on Earth are not complicated. They do not come in capsules. They do not require a prescription. Most of them are sitting in your grocery store right now for a few dollars. So the real question is not whether ancient people knew something we do not. The question is whether we are willing to eat the way they did. If this gave you something to think about, subscribe to the channel. We cover the intersection of ancient wisdom and modern science every week. And there is a lot more where this came from. Now tell us in the comments. Which of these 5 foods do you already eat regularly? This video is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. The foods discussed may support general health and have been traditionally used across cultures, but they are not a cure or treatment for any medical condition. Always consult a qualified healthcare professional before making changes to your diet, especially if you have existing health conditions or take medication. Statements using words like may, can, some studies suggest, and traditionally used reflect available evidence, not guaranteed outcomes.